Good day, everyone. I'm attorney Linda Bernard here in the city of Detroit, and it's a pleasure to be with you today. I have a special guest with me today that I'd like to introduce you to. His name is Mr. John Cromer. Many of you probably know him already because he's been a candidate for city council as well as for the House of Representatives for the city of Detroit, District 3, I believe it is. But in any event, it's a real pleasure for me to have him here today. I want to talk about criminal justice issues today and the Detroit Police Department. As you know, the Detroit Police Department is the largest department in not just the city of Detroit, but also in the state of Michigan. Its budget is almost $1 billion. So having said that, obviously it's important, but even more important than that is public safety within this community and what I like to call constitutional policing. My guest today is Mr. Cromer. He's had some considerable experience with law enforcement. He is, ladies and gentlemen, a returning citizen. He'll tell you a little bit about his case. We just want to talk about it for a couple of seconds and what his process has been and what his procedure has been with respect to dealing with law enforcement in this community. Hello, John.
Hey, good afternoon. How are you?
How are you?
Good, and thank you so much for having me here this afternoon with you, Linda. It's certainly a delight to sit down with you to talk about criminal justice and criminal justice reform. What can we do to help reduce crime and recidivism in our city of Detroit? Linda told you correctly that I did spend some time incarcerated for a nonviolent offense of shoplifting.
For how many years, John?
I served 13 years plus for this offense, and I think we have to really take a look, and we're talking about reform, we need to take a look on the inside of prisons to see what's really going on inside the prison. It was what was going on inside the prison that resulted in me spending there.
Being there that long. But see, my perspective is a little different because as far as I'm concerned, everything starts with the police department.
Yes.
Everything starts with a police report. There is no case, nothing but goes to the prosecutor's office, and I'm an attorney, and so I'm familiar with these police reports and obviously with the prosecutor's office. Everything starts with the police. What the police said, how the police wrote it up, how they view what happened,
right.
And of course their personal perspective is present within that document.
Right.
So once the police, in fact, or you indicate or you file a police report, which incidentally is a sworn document and one which you can be prosecuted for if in fact you make any misstatements in it. Once that document is generated, then it goes to the prosecutor's office. Mm-hmm. And of course, once it goes to the prosecutor's office, the prosecutor decides whether they're going to bring charges or not, or whether there should be a police investigation. Right. In terms of police departments and police abuses, I think the best thing that's ever happened, and I'd like your opinion on this, John, is the fact that now in many communities, Detroit is one, police are required to wear either a body cam as well as keep their dash cam on. And what I'm in favor of very much is that if in fact you are arrested or I'm arrested and there is no body cam evidence of what the police officer is saying or no dash cam evidence of what he's saying, that case be dismissed. Because I've discovered, just as you saw with George Floyd and everyone and Breonna and everyone else, what the police write up as what happened is not what happened.
I understand.
And so if we can, even in your case, obviously interdict this system at the police level and make the police more honest, more accountable, make them, if you will, demonstrate even greater integrity. Many of them have integrity, and I know it's a tough job, public safety. But what we've seen are continuous just lies. So how do we keep everybody honest? We keep them honest with a camera. The eye in the sky will work. What do you think?
Well, I agree with you to some extent. I do think that having the police have cameras and on their vehicles and on their body to be able to record what's happening, the occurrence, I think that's a great idea. However, I also say and think that if they don't have the evidence on the video, then that case should be dismissed.
That's what I said.
And I agree with you 100%. Especially if we're spending all this money and we're relying on this particular technology. I mean, if I remember correctly, I believe at the time that we got these cameras, they were actually begging for it to happen. Some of our citizens were begging for it to happen.
Yes.
So there's a due process in that.
There's
And,
total
and
due
that due
process.
process and that is being violated if you're claiming that this preponderance of this evidence is supposed to be here and it's not there.
Yeah, but I think there's more than enough, certainly testimony and evidence throughout the country to indicate that, there's sometimes a gap between what the police say what happened and what the individual says what
And
happened.
you have to look at, you have to, and I don't know how they can do this, but they're going to have to look at the way that the police write some of these reports, because the police is not writing the gospel.
That's correct.
And they're accepting this, the prosecutors accepting these reports from the police officers as the gospel, and they're determining what charge or charge is they're going to give you.
Well, the police department works in concert, obviously, with the prosecutor's office. That's what they do.
Right.
I mean, they are both responsible for public safety. And, of course, the prosecutor's office takes care of the in-court stuff, and the police take care of, if you will, the street stuff. So, yeah, I do think that there's clearly been a gap there between what at least defendants indicate happened and what the police say what happened.
That's right.
And the only way to deal with that, unless you're going to put police officers under oath or give them a lie detector test, is to make sure that
i.e., the purpose of a trial, and that right there. When I know that's a reality and understand that people are sometimes railroaded to jail and prison because the officer just railroaded them because of whatever during this encounter they had. Whatever happened, it didn't happen the way the police officer said it happened.
absolutely.
But the prosecutor, because they're sworn to do a job, are not being able to see the truth.
No, they can't. They can only
So
rely
innocent
on,
people are being sent to jail and prison. Innocent people are being prosecuted. The
Right.
problem that I have with that too is that if I get into trouble and you come to me and say, well, if you go to trial, we're going to give you 100 years, but if you plead guilty to this plea agreement, which is a Cobb agreement or a Killebrew agreement, then I'm going to let you off. But let you off to what?
to a conviction which is on your record
Forever.
which becomes one of the issues that I know you've been very passionate about, and that's expungement.
Oh my God, yes, the expungement law. And I just want to say thank you to Governor Whitmore and all the legislators, that the public servants who worked hard on this expungement law. However, I think we need to go back to the table. I don't think we did enough with the expungement law. And the expungement law, basically with the new way that is written, is basically just automatically slamming the doors of opportunity in our faces. Okay, so we don't have to go back to the judge and ask for a second chance. It's supposed to be automatically given to us, but it does not take into the fact that this discussion that we're having about prosecutors and police determining how to charge you, sometimes they throw the book at you. And if they throw the book at you, there's no way for you to overcome and be able to get an expungement under this new law that they just made this year.
Well, but what happens in most prosecutions, of course, is that you have multiple charges.
Yes.
So you could, a simple case can become 5 different felony charges.
Right.
And then what happens is they say to you, well, if you plead to this one felony, then we'll dismiss these other 4 felonies,
Right.
and so forth and so on. There is a practice of overcharging. But as you can see, even in the Wayne County Prosecutor's Office now, they've initiated something called the Integrity Unit, which is
Yes.
going back over convictions that the prosecutor's
Right.
office actually prosecuted people that were innocent, and they had exculpatory evidence at that time, but it was never reviewed.
And understand that the officer wrote a fiction
Correct.
report.
That goes back to what I said.
fictitious-
It starts with the police.
A fictitious report to either close the case, to retaliate, to get at, to show this defendant who's the boss. Whatever the case is, it is wrong, and these type of behaviors are prevalent even in prison when it comes to corrections officers who are able to write charges against inmates.
For your information, ladies and gentlemen, when you are incarcerated, you can get what are called tickets.
Major misconduct reports or minor misconduct
And they're
reports.
called tickets.
Right.
And when you apply for parole or
Yes.
whatever it is,
Yes.
or a reduction in sentence, then
Yes.
all of those tickets
Yes.
that you've received
Yes.
are things that can keep you in jail. If you've gotten 5 tickets and you're up for parole, then I mean, these aren't major things. There isn't anything you can do really major, quite frankly, in prison. But these are small things. It's a black mark against
Yes.
you.
Yes,
and
it
and the
is.
decision will be, of course, well, we shouldn't let him out yet
Right.
because he got 5 tickets.
Right.
Can you give me an example of
Right.
what the tickets are for, or what they can be for?
Well, again, they're called major misconduct reports, and they're also called minor misconduct
Okay.
reports. They also have non-bondable type of major misconduct reports, and non-bondable reports are those where if you were fighting or had a possession of a weapon or drugs or money, the major type of violations, those are called non-bondable charges. And then there's also bondable charges, things like disobeying a direct order or insolence or being out of place, which is the one that really befuddled me. How can you be out of place when you're sent to prison? You're in prison and they're telling you you're out of place. You're right. That's not where our people should be. You're right. They're locking too many of us up. And then for the parole board or any review board to consider reports written by a racist, retaliatory, or vindictive officer, that's what's happening in our prisons today. And that alone speaks to why a lot of people are being trapped or lost in our system. That's how they lose them. And check our segregation units in every prison. Check those segregation units, and you'll find that there are some inmates in these segregation units that should have been home a long time ago, but they're trapped by this team of this. I don't know what to call them really, but this regime, if you will, a regime of racism.
And race obviously plays a part in that.
It does.
John, it's interesting that you make that comment. Reverend Jesse Jackson refers to Jackson Prison as the all-black male academy.
Yeah.
And and so much of the prison industrial complex, of course, came about after the prison bill, after the
1994 crime bill.
the one that was
Yeah.
sponsored, unfortunately, by Senator
Well, that's
by
not
Vice
cor-
President Biden.
That's not true. That's not
Okay.
true.
No.
That's not true. And people need to understand that. First of all, I was in prison myself, and while I was in prison, I did a lot of reading. And some of the things
Yes, you
I
did.
read was the Second Chance Act. I also read the crime bill 1994. It was actually sponsored by a senator in Texas.
I'm not surprised.
Okay, it was a senator in Texas. But you need to understand that we had a senator in Texas that presented this bill. We had an Arkansas president who signed the bill.
Well, I understand that, but
Okay.
he signs every bill that comes to him unless there's a serious objection.
Bill
I mean,
Clinton, the
I understand.
Democrat, he signed the bill.
Yes, he did.
But people understand the crime bill was written in a way in response to the drugs, the crime, and all the violence that was occurring back around that time, back in the 90s. And what occurred was when I think his name was Senator Brooks, James Brooks, I think was his name. I'm not really sure, but he's from Texas. He presented this bill, and you must understand that this crime bill unanimously passed through
I
the
understand,
House.
with the Democrats
And within
and the
2 weeks,
Republicans.
that's right, and within 2 weeks, it passed through the Senate.
Correct.
And then within 1 week, it was signed into law.
Right.
So it was a fast. So for me to just point the finger at Joe Biden, I think is unfair.
I'm not pointing any finger. My problem with it is, and you're absolutely right, that that the Democrats are also participated in this as well as the Republicans. However, as you know, Senator Biden was the point person in the Senate on this bill. But
For the Senate, yes, through the Senate. He wrote the Senate version of the bill. Yes.
That's my point. And but the problem with the bill was that it was discriminatory, at least in my view, and clearly in Rainbow Push, and I'm sure Reverend Sharpton and everyone, discriminatory on its face. Because what it said was that 5 sweet and low packets of crack cocaine would get you as much time as like 5 kilos of pure cocaine.
Which is ridiculous.
Right. So black people only, in fact, were dealing, if you will, in many respects, with crack cocaine, the small stuff, small street dealers,
Right.
and that would get them put in jail for 20 years.
Right.
But the guy that was, had 5 kilos in his house, he could get 5 years, 4 years, 3 years, or maybe no
Or
time at
home
all.
arrest, yeah.
So it created that bill created the criminal industrial complex in the United States, and that is why. How many people are in jail now? How many? About 2 million.
2.5 million.
2 million,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
And the vast majority of those are African American.
It is, yeah.
And African American male as well as female.
One of the problems with the crime bill, too, in 1994, it allocated over $9 billion to build new prison complexes
Right.
throughout the country. So these complexes are not built. Now they need to find people to fill that. They need bodies for those
Absolutely.
complexes. So they, I think disproportionately came after the black
No,
men.
not only that.
in this country.
It was privatized.
It was-
That bill privatized.
Privatized,
as well.
privatized, and it became a problem. They've already proven to themselves and to the world that privatization of a prison is not going to work. It has not worked. It will not work because the levels of corruption, abuse, and other malfeasance that happens in these type of private prisons and private jails. I don't know if you recall the Baldwin facility that they had maybe about 20 years ago, where they were incarcerating. You had to be 18 and under to go to this place. If you were over 18, you couldn't be at this place. It was called Baldwin, and Baldwin was one of these private prisons where the youth were being abused. They were being sexually abused, physically abused, being starved, being beaten, being forced to fight each other during games, and all these type of alleged behaviors were being facilitated or orchestrated by the staff, by the prison staff.
Yeah, I don't know what kind of psychological monitoring goes into, or review of people goes into picking people to be corrections officers
Yes.
or prison officers, but clearly there's a disconnect.
There's certainly a disconnect.
in-
Now
in-
you look
in
at
many
Detroit.
instances.
When you look at Michigan, Detroit. You're talking about Detroit. They sent us up north over the bridge, up in the UP. You're talking about corrections officers. They're all Caucasian. There's not one black officer in the whole facility, not one black nurse, not one black deputy warden, not one black anything, all Caucasian. Now, how do you expect for them to treat us?
Well, I expect them to treat you with dignity and respect, but if that doesn't occur,
It does not.
then that becomes an issue.
It becomes an issue. It is an issue because they look at prison. Most people understand that you're sent to prison for punishment, and that's not correct. The judge sentenced us to prison as punishment. So that's our penalty for violating the law. We went to prison as punishment. If you send me to prison for punishment, then that tells me that you're allowing the corrections officers to put their foot on my neck and abuse me, and you're going to facilitate it. You're going to turn a blind eye to what's happening to me in the incarceration. But thank God for former, God bless his soul, to rest his soul, Doctor. I call him Doctor. But the Honorable John Conyers and the remarkable Miss Rosa Parks back in 1996, when I was experiencing a lot of internal abuse from corrections officers at the Riverside Correctional Facility. I write letters out to different legislators, different leaders. I wrote a letter to Debbie Stabenow, to
Well, you made your point. Go
yeah,
ahead.
so I wrote letters to all these people. Well, John Conyers responded, and when he responded, I got relief. They sent me all the way up north to Marquette Branch Prison. I was in prison for shoplifting, a pair of gym shoes, and a set of bed sheets. But the officers told me that I was black, but didn't sound black.
Okay.
They said, you're black, but you don't sound black. And they started harassing me, and they put me in the hole in the segregation for having a dictionary that was overdue from the general library. It was a couple days past due. So they wrote me a theft ticket.
A theft ticket.
A theft ticket for a dictionary. And then the hearing officer, through this kangaroo court process in the prison system, said, well, Mr. Cromer, you're already here for still in the shoplifting, so that's theft. And so you're continuing that behavior because you stole this dictionary. You didn't take it back to the library, so you stole it. So I'm going to give you 30 days in detention. That's segregation for 30 days. Well, when I arrived there for 30 days is where I met the corrections officers who told me that I was black but didn't sound black. And they began to write bogus trumped up, if you will, hashtag trumped up, misleading, lies, misconduct reports that then the parole board uses to assess my eligibility for parole release.
Well, I agree with you. It's a sort of a round robin, if you will, unfortunately, approach to justice. One thing begets another, begets another, begets another.
Yes.
And it's all negative in terms of the individual. We have in Detroit, I just want to come back to Detroit for a minute.
Okay.
About 3,000 officers, maybe 3,200 right now.
Mm-hmm.
Our force is diverse, as you know.
Mm-hmm.
It has gay people, and in fact, there's a gay unit. Not unit of officers, but there's a gay association
Mm-hmm.
within the police department. And of course, there are, African American officers, Hispanic officers, etc.
Mm-hmm.
So our police department has become more diverse. But it also has a number of issues. What would you like to see the Detroit Police Department do differently?
Well, first of all, I'd like to see every police department across this country become less Confederate. The police department,
What do
as
you
far
mean
as,
by that?
well, I believe our police department is racist from its origin, from the base of it, from its creation. If you think about the very first police force that was ever created.
It was to hunt down runaway slaves.
Oh, okay.
And they had marshal's badges.
And they have
to
the
do
marshal badges to do it.
That was what they
some
did.
of them didn't always make it. There were a lot of George Floyd cases happening back in those days, but there were
Back
no
in those days,
there were
these
no
days.
there were no cameras to capture this. And this is the same thing that happens in prison. So if any guys or women are in prison or in jail and you're watching this show today, you better rest assured that I'm out here letting them know how it is and there for you. I'm letting them know that they have their feet on your neck, and you're not there for that. You were sentenced to jail or prison as punishment, not for punishment.
So you would do what then with the Detroit Police Department?
With the Detroit Police Department,
Because that's where it starts.
Well,
it starts with officers.
they obviously need more money. There's a lot of rhetoric about defunding the police department. I think that's ridiculous because as soon as someone steals your car, or breaks into your home, or you have some type of domestic quarrel, you're going to call 911. You're going to
Correct.
call the police. So I think the rhetoric about defunding the police is just what it is, rhetoric.
I agree with you.
I think what the police, if anything, they need more money to get training, to have psychologists and psychiatrists on hand to help diffuse a lot of these 911 calls. Families can attest to this that I know personally that can say that during this pandemic, a lot of their problems have been, well, first of all, let me back that up and say that a lot of families in Detroit have family members who suffer with mental illness. This has been a trying time for them during this pandemic. Their mentally ill family member cannot go to their daily groups that they used to go to because it's closed. They can't go to their outings like they used to because it's closed. They don't have the type of mental health treatment to get care. So I think the police department needs to have more psychological training, how to diffuse situations, and I would certainly want to say that they need to stay healthy. A lot of Detroit police officers are sick. We want to make sure they stay healthy, and the ones that are sick, I hope that they'll get well soon.
How do you feel about diversity within the police department, as you know, and or them living in the city of, or not living in the city of Detroit? So, I think it's about 78% or 78% of the officers live outside of the city.
I
of
think
Detroit.
that's ridiculous, and that's
Well,
why
but but that's the law. You cannot mandate. It was under Governor Engler. Of course, Mayor Young had in fact made it a rule that all police officers had to live in the city of Detroit. That went to federal court. Judge Damon Keith argued the case, and as a result, he upheld it, and it was held to be constitutional when it was appealed, of course, to the Court of Appeals. And then, of course, the legislature decided, sua sponte, on their own, to change the law and to say that if you are a public employee, you don't have to live in the municipality or where you work, which, of course, applied to police officers.
Right.
And as a result,
I wish
of
we
that,
could change that.
a lot of people say that,
I
but
wish
on
we
the
could
other
change
hand,
it.
but the chief and even the mayor have indicated that would not be advisable because they would lose a lot of officers, they would lose a lot of talent. Most of the people that are appointees, for example, Many of them do live in the city, but many of them do not.
Well,
you
I want to
you
question
you
this talent. I want to
you would
question
have
the
a
talent part that you're
talent
talking
drain.
about. I want to question that talent
Well,
part.
because you don't have officers to replace them with, John. I mean, if 78% of your officers live outside of the city, and you say you got to move in the city, and there could just be a blue flu, for example.
Yeah.
Nobody
Well, I
can.
just wish, I wish that if there are any law enforcement officers, Detroit police officers watching this show, I hope that you'll consider to move back to Detroit. We need you in our city. I know that you're enjoying the suburbs, you like the quiet out there, but we need you here. We need you to move on the block to encourage Pookie and Ray Ray not to open up a drug house.
I resent that.
We need
I
you.
resent that
We need you.
characterization.
We need you on the block to encourage people to not violate the law. To not violate the law. With your presence, they know that you're there. They'll be more reluctant to do something wrong.
Well, I agree with that. But are there other aspects, and I agree with you, certainly desensitizing police to the community and to community issues. But one of the other things that bothers me personally, John, is the fact that so many things are just sort of technical. They're not really an offense, but somehow you're wind up getting arrested, getting stopped, getting frisked. You haven't done anything wrong, or you're doing something wrong, like Mr. Gardner in New York City. You're selling Lucy cigarettes, but why arrest? Just tell him to go away. Give him a warning, let him go. Why take it? Why keep escalating?
Why create that burden?
Yeah, no, why escalate
Yeah.
minor
Right.
offenses? Just minor
Right.
that don't make any sense.
No sense at
I mean,
all.
it doesn't make any sense for the officer because he can be harmed or she can be harmed, and it certainly doesn't make any sense for the community because it just creates hostility within the community.
right.
They want you to protect and serve, but they don't want you to, be overbearing and call a tech. Well, you jaywalk, so I got to lock you up now. It just
What I would
doesn't
like,
make any
what I would
sense.
love to see Chief Craig and the rest of the Detroit Police Department do is maybe hold some type of community town meetings where they're able to talk to young people and talk to the citizens of our city to let them know, or to get a better idea on where we are, and as a community.
Well, the Detroit Police Commission does have a community meeting every month in one of the seven areas of the city of
They need
Detroit.
to promote that more because they need to promote that more.
Well, there's one in your neighborhood. It will generally be at a school or a gymnasium or something like that that allows people to come. That allows people to come and go. You can also, except now with Corona, of course, everything is done on Zoom.
Right.
But before Zoom, the commission meetings were held downtown in police headquarters, and that gave people some pause because you're photographed as you go in. There's certainly facial recognition, I believe, I know it is in the police department, and you've got to scan your ID and all that kind of stuff. You don't have to do that at the community meetings. You can just walk in and sit down. There's nothing intimidating about that process. But I agree with you, and I think that's a very good point that the community meetings need to be advertised more, and so that people can come out and participate if and when we get back to community meetings when we're just not on television.
Right, and that's exactly right. I think there's a lot of people that are confused about the law. But I just want to before we run out of time, I just want to give another shout out to Governor Whitmore because just this month, she did something to expand the expungement law
I know she did that.
regarding traffic tickets.
Yeah, that makes sense.
That
And
was
what
a
is
big
it
thing.
what is it with respect to traffic tickets?
Well-
Why don't you let our audience know?
Well-
in 30 seconds.
Well, the old expungement law, you could not get an expungement based on certain traffic violations. Now our governor has rescinded that, and you can get an expungement.
Well, you can't get an expungement if it's OWI,
UWI, yeah.
operating while intoxicated.
Yeah.
There are a number of things that you can't get expunged, which are pretty soft things because in Michigan, drunk driving is 0.08, which is 2 beers,
Right.
and unless you're a very small person, it's hard to be intoxicated.
Right.
off of 2 beers,
Yes.
ordinary beers. I don't know about
Yeah,
German beer,
yeah.
which is strong beer.
Michelob.
But anyway, having said all that, John, I can't tell you how much I appreciate you
Oh, man.
joining us today.
Wow. Anytime, Linda.
I mean, your experience is just invaluable. And I think everyone who's listening has learned a lot. I certainly have. And I am delighted that you took the time to visit with us today
Thank you.
here at the station. And I look forward to seeing you again. And Godspeed and good luck to you.
Thank you. Thank
And
you
good
so
health.
much. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.